Hello and welcome back to the Theology of the Body Bible Study. Again, my name is John Bishop. I'm a Focus Missionary at the University of Maryland, and I'm excited to talk with you about Chapter 5 of the study. So this chapter was not written by me. It was actually written by an incredible man named Matt Fradd, who has devoted a very large portion of his career to fighting the epidemic in our society, which is pornography. Matt is an accomplished author and speaker. He runs several podcasts, and today I'd like to recommend a couple of his books to you before we begin. Read both of them. They're both excellent. The first that I'd like to recommend is Matt Fradd's The Porn Myth, which is a very excellent resource, not only giving suggestions for recovery from addiction to pornography, but also just really explains why pornography is wrong in detail. So if you want to know more about the reasons why pornography is wrong, more than the article shares, then I encourage you to go to this book. Also, just recently, Matt and his wife, Cameron Fradd, have put together a book called Restored: True Stories of Love and Trust After Porn. Again, an excellent resource, especially for people who are dealing with the after effects of pornography, whether in themselves or in their significant other. And I would encourage both of these books to you. Matt Fradd, excellent man. If you ever have the chance to hear him speak, please do. As we go into this chapter on pornography, I want to make a note at the start. We have not written discussion guides for this chapter, nor the chapter on contraception, because your exposition of these topics are going to vary from group to group, especially the chapter on pornography. Bringing up this subject can be very sensitive, and depending on the maturity level of your group, how well your group knows one another, is really going to change the way in which you present it. So, that being the case, I'm going to give you a few pointers. First, your goal here at the beginning ought to be to connect everything that we learned in the first several chapters of the study to your application in the topic here of pornography. So think, for example, of things like the language of the body, of shame, and of original nakedness. How do these very important concepts in theology of the body bear out on the issue of pornography? So I will take a stab at a few of those bridges just to set you up going forward, and then I'll talk a little bit about the article. So there's a famous quote out there, and the source is unknown, but it says that the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much. The problem with pornography is, in fact, that it shows far too little. Again, the problem with pornography is not that it shows too much. The problem with porn is that it shows too little. What does that mean? Obviously, pornography, in a purely physical sense, shows quite a bit. And so how can it be that pornography shows too little? Well, what the quote is trying to say is this, that what pornography does is it plays on our brokenness as humans, our broken way of viewing things, and trains our eyes to reduce people to nothing more than a body. We forget about the person, we forget about the interior life, we forget about anything save the most shallow observations that one can make about a human person. The body is no longer something which expresses the person, as we said in the second chapter of this Bible study. Rather, the body is just an object for our own selfish gratification. The problem with porn is not that it shows too much. The problem with porn is that it shows too little. Whenever we view someone in this way, it's very common that a certain sense of shame surrounds that sexual experience. And then for that reason, we begin to view sex itself as a shameful thing. Instead of being a good, beautiful, holy thing that God has given us as a way to communicate His own life to us, sex has now become something much less. We've lost its sacramental nature, and we've been given, again, something like a fast food throwaway, counterfeit version of real sex. So shame is brought into the sexual experience, and we're yet another step away from original nakedness. Again, the experience that Adam and Eve had in the garden. When they viewed one another, they were naked, but they felt no shame. What pornography does is introduce us into a shame-filled experience here that will necessarily disappoint. Another concept that I'd encourage you to employ here is that of the language of the body. God gave us our bodies to be used in a specific way, and if we train ourselves to use them in a different way, we are setting ourselves up for failure on a number of different fronts. We're setting ourselves up for disappointment. We're setting ourselves up again for shame and a very, very hollow experience of human sexuality that won't fulfill us and affirm us, but instead will do exactly the opposite. Pornography doesn't enhance sex, it ruins sex. It doesn't teach us how to speak the language of the body. It teaches us, it keeps us from reading the language of the body. That letter that we talked about between God and man, which is the body itself, pornography takes that letter and obscures it. This is why when Matt Fradd, in the second paragraph under the heading Grow Pineapples and Invent Calculators, makes the point, as we have in this Bible study, that it's not out of a hate for sex that Christians are against porn. It's in fact because we are in love with sex. And pornography makes sex into a cheap counterfeit. Just in the same way that gluttony is not a celebration of food, pornography is not a celebration of authentic sex. It's a celebration of counterfeit sex. Pornography, like I said, keeps us from authentically speaking the language of the body, a language of which God is the author. And you can see in the heading, How Bad Is It, Doc? Towards the end of the article, Matt Fradd lists several of the concrete negative effects that porn has on our psyche, on our bodies, and on our experience of sexuality. So if we want to learn how to have a virtuous experience of sex, if we want to learn to train our eyes to see people in an authentic way, and thereby to allow ourselves to be seen in an authentic way, we must say no to pornography. As you end this Bible study, I would encourage you to end on a note of practicality and also a note of hope. So, first, speaking to the practicality, Matt Fradd has given you 5 excellent resources at the end of the article, and so if your students are wondering where to go after this point, please push them towards those resources. They're very helpful in helping someone recover from a pornographic addiction going forward. But then finally, a note of hope, a note of mercy. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you all know, pornography is rampant in our day and age. The statistics are absolutely staggering, and odds are at least some, if not the majority, if not all of the students in your Bible study will have some experience with pornography. Can you encourage them? Remember from the last video, students need someone to accompany them through these difficult situations. And as the leader of this Bible study, you're exactly the right sort of person to help them through these difficulties, or at least to connect them to the right resource. Thanks so much again for talking about this very important issue in our day and age. And I look forward to talking with you next week about our final chapter in this study. God bless.